May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be always pleasing to our God, whose generosity is always greater than any thanks we can offer. Amen.
Amen.
Add it to the day.
Well, 4 days before we took a trip out west recently, I cracked a tooth. And I was in denial of its severity until I realized through Thursday I needed some attention. It wasn't something else. Now, my daughter Rachel works in a dental office in Ann Arbor, and luckily I was able to get in an appointment on Friday. Now, the dentist was new there. She was young, she was a female, and she was a different ethnicity than me. And it made no difference to me at all, and not then and not now. I trusted her skills. And I yielded any perceived power I had in the situation to her. Well, after more than 2 hours in the chair, I left with a tooth that could be saved and a temporary crown on it to bide me over until I could get back 3 weeks later. I was very pleased with her skill, her professionalism, and her empathy. Even with a numb face, I knew healing was taking place. It was a different kind of pain. I was thankful and I was grateful. Now, my gratefulness was tempered a bit when, upon the news of checking out, I heard that it was going to cost me all my insurance premium for this year, plus another $500. I was still numb. But it's funny, isn't it? Because here I was going in, I was in terrible pain. Now, come on, I'm okay. But it's funny how we put a price on things. You know, in hindsight, to kind of equate money with the situation, and we just kind of think that's our degree of thankfulness is related to what it cost. Well, I was busy the next 3 days. Right out of the chair, Nancy throws me in the car, and I drive to Grand Rapids to see a football game that night for where my brother and my son-in-law coaches, and then the next day, more importantly, my grandson was playing. So I was there, we stayed, we came home that night so I could be at church the next day, and I did tell people about my tooth. Tom's not here today, but Tom and I each shared a story about busting a tooth, and I was, I did share my thankfulness with several people. But I was on my plane on Monday morning to fly out west, and when I showed there, a couple of days later, my thankfulness in spreading that good news wasn't quite as frequently or quite as fervently as what I had been doing in the past. We tend to forget. Well, being grateful and giving thanks to God is not only out of the mystery box the theme, it is the theme for today. Gratefulness and thanks to God. And when we look at how the characters in today's story reacts to God's favors, we learn that being grateful and giving thanks to God is every bit as important as our worship and our praise of God. Through the lessons, we also find out how gratefulness and thanks can be tempered after God has provided a healing or another miracle for us. Now, Naaman, he was a powerful military figure whom God chose favor in order to have him serve as a model of faith. Naaman wasn't a Jewish guy. He didn't worship the God of Israel. But he needed that healing that would come from the God of Israel. His leprosy is a little bit odd because it didn't seem to ban him from community life. Maybe it was like the saying that someone's a little bit pregnant. He could mask his condition. But he knew that he eventually was going to have to deal with the repercussions of it. Now, two important details of this lesson are withheld from our reading today. There's like a little gap there. One was Naaman prepared to cover the cost. 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. Naaman believed that the issue was wealth and power. He proceeds on the assumption that salvation and healing are something to be bought. So he came prepared. Now this assumption is detailed often in Scripture as negative, but still people today think that God's favors are for sale. Now Naaman, he wasn't initially compliant with the simple directions to heal his leprosy. In matter of fact, he was outraged that Elisha wouldn't meet him and perform some elaborate religious rite to bring healing. You know, he wanted someone to come over and say some words and move some hands and be gone. Well, it didn't happen. He felt humiliated that he was supposed to instead enter this grimy-looking Jordan River and immerse himself 7 times. Now, I was telling Nancy, it's probably like he felt like he was at some dunk tank somewhere. Where, you don't know who'd been in that water so much because it's pretty grimy. And, every time you get in, it's a big laugh on you for being there. And this thing, Naaman felt that way. He was in a foreign land. He didn't feel good about it. Well, like his wife's servant, who was a lowly Israeli slave girl who had been trafficked. Nowadays you'd say she was trafficked. She was stolen. It was probably someone else that was trafficked. His servants. His servants said, Father Naaman, take this leap of faith and do this. God chose Naaman to be healed. And it was God's best people, his servants and that slave girl, that helped get it done. Naaman didn't get it done. Well, and this was the salvation of Naaman. He decided to submit to God's request. He was now healed physically and spiritually. Naaman served as a visual testimony to Israel, for example, and even to us today. We forget obedience and trust in God equals wholeness and a right relationship with God. Obedience and trust. Now, if you want to know about the second important detail left out of the lesson from 2 Kings, you can look it up later today and read what happens right after Naaman's healed, and he's getting ready to be God's ambassador at this point, because he's been healed. He understands. But then something happens which is shocking, but I wouldn't think it's completely unexpected. So you can look at that. Now, excuse me, the gospel lesson of the encounter of Jesus with the 10 lepers is a little different take on thanks and gratitude, because this group was the antithesis of Naaman. They were complete outcasts. They weren't a little bit pregnant. They had leprosy really, really badly. Plus 90% were probably Jews. These lepers, they were missing out of family and community life that could at least offer some basic care for this condition they had, but they were banned. Now, Jesus has resumed his travel towards his faith in Jerusalem. And he's entering this village where the 10 lepers are nearby, and they stray from their pronouncement they're supposed to make. They're supposed to say, unclean, unclean, so we don't want to get near them. And instead, they called Jesus by name, and they asked for mercy. And Jesus comes close and sees what the situation, and then he doesn't do anything like that either. He just implies their healing by telling them to be examined by a priest to verify they've been healed. Now, just like in Naaman's case, this healing is done at a distance by a God who's chosen to do the healing. Now, all the lepers have to hear is that words. And what they do is they just take off in a big rush to find a priest. You wonder how that healing on the run worked, though. I mean, were they able to run along and she's looking better now, so maybe I'm looking better too? I don't know how that all supposed to work out. And they just took it on the faith that they were being healed. And I wonder what the Samaritan was thinking, because he's realized there's no Jewish priest for him to go to anyway. He's a foreigner. Well, Jesus had things to wonder about himself. He was wondering why only one of the lepers, a foreigner at that, returned to give God thanks and praise. Were the other 9 so elated that they didn't think about sharing that joy that comes with the ones that heal them? You know, like Dinah says, take a friend out with you to eat or something. You get the gift card. Were they like many of us? I'm guilty. That you receive a gift from God and you really forget to even thank Him in the first place or show some humble gratitude and confession. You know, even Naaman did that. Well, the lepers were running to be confirmed that they were free of the disease, but they were running in the wrong direction because they missed out on that bonus that God offers the others who are submissive and obedient. In this case, that foreign leper. You know, maybe the 9 lepers just wanted to get on with their lives. You know, they've been void of stuff that we often take so much for granted. Good health, wholeness. So, 9 lepers are healed indeed, but they missed out on what the other 2 foreign lepers received in salvation. Those 2 had been changed at the core as a result of just generosity from God. And like those 2, God is always interested in the current core of us. What's our orientation of our faith at the moment? Are we living up to our end of the deal? We learn that only faithful obedience and an attitude of trust can lead to wholeness and a right relationship with God. The disciples who witnessed this live, as well as us who hear from it years and years later, also learned that we are exhorted not to seek thanks of others. Don't be a person who always wants to be thankful for something, but to continually give our thanks to God. I need to send that Dennis and the staff card of gratitude and probably write a real good review on their online website. And in everything we do, give thanks to God. Amen.
Amen.